again, I'm not smart enough to know where they're going to be. But for a trade, I think yields continue to go lower.
All right, let's talk MBIA. Soaring today, actually touching a 52-week high after settling with Bank of America over disputes stemming from MBIA's insurance of mortgage-backed securities dating back to the housing crisis, putting to rest the costly and drawn-out legal dispute. Kate Kelly joins us with the very latest on the story. Kate.
Melissa, BofA's settlement today with MBIA may be a turning point for the company and its investors as traders start to see some mitigation of the mortgage liabilities that have been hanging over the bank for some years now. The MBIA settlement may be for less than $2 billion, but it resolves one of the stickiest and longest-running disputes BofA has had with insurers and investors since the ill-fated purchase of Countrywide Financial in 2008. Buying Countrywide, a deal that only cost about $4 billion at the time, has brought with it some $40 billion and counting in mortgage liabilities related to the high-risk loans that Countrywide underwrote, helping to spur the financial crisis. BofA has spent recent years trying to settle its outstanding issues with a host of players, from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to the private mortgage securities investors who are still debating an $8.5 billion accord right now. A judge will rule on that important chunk of those settlements later this month, adding further clarity to the big picture. But in the meantime, Melissa, investors are appearing to be cheering the progress for the embattled bank, even if its effect is to give BofA's first quarter earnings a 10-cent haircut.
All right, thank you, Kate. Stick around here because we want to bring in Benjamin Losky, the superintendent of New York's Department of Financial Services, MBIA's regulator, and the man behind the settlement today. Mr. Losky, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
What fueled reaching the settlement today, and why do you think Bank of America also took a stake in the company?
Look, I think it was an important settlement today. It's positive for both the Bank of America, and for MBIA. We've been negotiating this for more than a year. It resolves a lot of exposure for BofA. It gives MBIA a path forward. They were really in some bad trouble there for a little while. And so we feel really good about the deal for both sides and, frankly, for the financial markets and for the system. So why did BofA take a stake? You'd have to ask them. I think it was a complex deal with a lot of moving parts. It resolved a lot of different exposures going both directions, and I think it was a smart deal and the right way to go.
Ben, it's Kate Kelly. Two quick questions for you. One is, do you think this sets any sort of precedent, and does this make a meaningful symbolic progress, at least in terms of the put-back risk to BofA? And secondly, what would have happened to MBIA if they had not been able to settle today or sometime in the very near future? They would have been taken over by your department, yes?
Potentially. I mean, they were definitely getting very low on liquidity, and usually when a company gets that low, we consider putting them into what's called rehabilitation. It's a form of bankruptcy for insurance companies, and the state, the Department of Financial Services, would end up running the company. And look, that is never a good outcome, and here we were able to avoid it through what I think is a smart deal, and found a path forward for MBIA, so I think that's great.
Now, you're speaking of MBIA's structured products division, correct? Not so much their municipal finance division, which was separated. I know that split up has been subject to litigation, but it has been separated, and the litigation resolved in favor of MBIA.
Yeah, it was resolved in favor, and the remaining litigation basically goes away between BofA and MBIA on that as a result of the deal today. So that goes away between them, and of course the putback litigation goes away. To answer your earlier question, I mean, I do think it does set something of a precedent in terms of trying to resolve these matters. I think it's a good day for BofA. I think it's a good day for MBIA. And anytime you can resolve something together with reason and carefully, it's better than resolving it through litigation. Litigation goes on and on and on. It is a totally inefficient way of resolving things. And at some point, life is too short, and we need to move on. And companies need to get on with their business plans going forward and not get mired in the past. So I think it's a good thing today for both companies.
Mr. Losky, last question here. You had mentioned that this puts MBIA on a path forward. Does that mean, in your view, that it has taken off the table the previous path that it had been on, which could have been this rehabilitation under your department?
Well, look, they're getting $1.7 billion today. They're also getting a $500 million credit facility. So that's more than $2 billion. And that obviously takes them out of the realm of insolvency going forward. So I think life is uncertain, and we'll see where things go in the future. But but today is a good day for MBIA, and I don't think anyone's talking insolvency today as they get this cash infusion.
All right. Thanks for your time, Mr. Losky. We appreciate it. Benjamin Losky, Superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services. Kate Kelly, you're still around. It's interesting to see the reaction. No surprise, the bondholders were breathing a sigh of relief. The stockholders were very excited. It sounds like, as he had said, insolvency is off the table, and perhaps now MBIA can actually get back to business and start issuing insurance on some new deals.
No, absolutely, Melissa. I think this clears up some uncertainties, not just for B of A, which I was talking about earlier, but as you mentioned, for MBIA as well. I mean, we saw a massive surge in their shares today. I spoke to one analyst who covers the stock very closely, and he says now that some of these issues are out of the way, not just this split up, which I mentioned was a subject of contention, but also, of course, the pending issues with B of A. They're really going to try to do well with their municipal finance division. The first thing they want to do is get a much higher credit rating, hopefully a single A, and then they can go out and start getting more business in the municipal finance insurance market and build on sort of any wins they have there to sort of increase their size and scope and hopefully even improve their rating over time. So that's a bull story in the view of some analysts, and certainly we've cleared up uncertainty on the structured product side as well.
You know, MBIA, it shows why it's impossible to be short specific names in the market on the whole. I mean, this was a 13% or so shortage. Stock is up 45% today. I mean, it's an incredible move. It just rips the faces off these shorts. And Radian's another one that has a pretty significant short interest. RDN that Jim Cramer spoke about, Pete Najarian spoke about, and a valuation level. I mean, RDN makes a lot of sense here because you might get that same short, not a 45% move, but you might see a similar short covering rally in that name.
Guy, I think that short squeeze point is really interesting, and of course I had to think of Bill Ackman today. I mean, the MBIA short a number of years ago was one of his career makers, right? I mean, he made a very bold bet, short bet on them that ended up doing very well for him. Of course, now he's trying to do the same with Herbalife, but it's very treacherous to get into that trade.
Yeah. Kate Kelly, thanks so much, and thanks for bringing us that interview with Ben Losky. Appreciate it. Kate Kelly joining us from headquarters. Before we head to break, let's get a check on some after-hours movers here. First, solar.